What if I told you that your mind isn't entirely your own?
Oh boy. That's a big premise to start with.
Right. But seriously, think about it. That according to this incredibly ancient, highly mathematical science, the thoughts you think, the wealth you accumulate, and even those sudden moments of deep isolation you feel, well, they were mapped out by a specific cosmic entourage surrounding you at the exact moment of your birth.
It's actually a really jarring thought for the modern individual. I mean, we're so conditioned to believe that we are entirely self-made. That our minds are just these blank slates we paint ourselves.
Totally, the whole bootstrap mentality.
Exactly. But this ancient framework from our source material suggests something radically different. It suggests you inherited a highly specific psychological ecosystem.
And that ecosystem is exactly what we are exploring today. So welcome to today's deep dive into the source material, where we are unpacking the profound science of Vedic astrology. Specifically, we're looking at something called yogas.
Yes, yogas.
Now, for you listening, when we say the word yoga, you might immediately picture, I don't know, a downward dog on a rubber mat or some intense breathing exercises in a hot room.
Right, the modern Western context of the word.
Yeah, but we need to clarify what this word actually means in the context of reading the stars.
It's a vital distinction to make right away. So the Sanskrit word yoga literally translates to a combination or a union or like a yoking together.
Okay, yoking, like oxen.
Yeah, joining two things. In astrological parlance, it refers to very specific geometric planetary combinations that indicate distinct physical or mental traits. Wealth, fortune, or misfortune. You can basically think of human life, according to this system, as falling under two grand divisions.
Okay, lay them on me.
You have yogas, which are your fortunes, elevations, and successes. And then you have arishtas, which are your misfortunes, restrictions, and sorrows.
Okay, so it's not just like, oh, I'm a Gemini, so I like to talk a lot.
No, not at all.
It's a highly specific architectural combination. Like, planet A is exactly 3 doors down from planet B.
Precisely. Strictly speaking, every single alignment in a birth chart is technically a combination of planets, but not all combinations get elevated to the dignity of being called the yoga.
Right, they have to be special.
Exactly. A true yoga represents a massive summation of inherited physical and psychological tendencies. It essentially shows your present environment and the exact degree of wealth, fame, rank, or adversity you're likely to experience as a sequel to previous actions.
Wow, the ultimate cosmic inheritance. But here is where we are narrowing our focus today for the listener. We aren't looking at the whole sky.
Right, be here for weeks.
Literally. We are focusing exclusively on combinations formed by one specific celestial body, and that is the moon. And actually, this is where I want to push back a little, or at least get some clarity from you.
Sure, go ahead.
If we're talking about external success, wealth, building empires, or becoming a ruler, which our source material talks about a lot, by the way, why are we looking at the moon?
It's a fair question.
I mean, shouldn't we be looking at the sun, which is, power, or maybe whatever planet rules career? Why focus on the mind for external wealth?
Because, well, in this framework, the mind is the singular lens through which every single piece of reality is filtered and experienced.
Right, perception is reality.
Completely. If you have all the wealth in the world, but your mind is tormented, you are poor.
That's deep and very true.
And conversely, if you are materially destitute, but your mind is fortified and joyous, you're a king. But astrologically, it goes deeper than just psychology. The moon, or Chandra in Sanskrit, has no light of its own, right?
Yeah, astronomically, it only reflects the light of the sun.
Exactly. It's a celestial mirror. Because it is a mirror, it is incredibly sensitive, highly malleable, and deeply impressionable.
Oh, I see. It takes on the flavor of whatever is around it.
Precisely. It doesn't just sit in the sky. It absorbs the energies of the planets that form a mathematical relationship with it. The fortunes of your life, these yogas we're talking about, are essentially descriptions of how your mind is supported, isolated, elevated, or afflicted by the energies literally surrounding it in the zodiac.
That is wild.
What's fascinating here is how these ancient texts describe these psychological and environmental realities with extreme mathematical precision. And our job today is to take these ancient royal interpretations and adapt them to the realities of your modern life.
I love that. Let's start mapping this out for the listener. We're going to jump right into our first combination, which has a fantastic name in the classical texts.
It really does.
It's called Gajakesari Yoga. The translation of this is the elephant and the lion.
Very dramatic.
Very. And the condition for this is beautifully simple but incredibly powerful. Gajakesari Yoga is formed when Jupiter is in a Kendra from the moon.
Yes. And let's make sure we define our terms clearly for the listener, because that's jargon.
Please do.
A Kendra is a quadrant, or an angular house in the birth chart. So we are talking about Jupiter being in the 1st, 4th, 7th, or 10th house relative to wherever the moon is sitting.
Okay, so if I picture the chart like a clock,
Sure.
and the moon is at 12 o'clock, Jupiter would be at 12, 3, 6, or 9 o'clock.
That is a perfect visualization.
Yes.
When planets are in Kendras from each other, they're in a highly dynamic, structurally sound relationship. They act as the 4 load-bearing walls of a building.
Load-bearing walls, I like that.
Now, we must understand what Jupiter or Guru represents. Jupiter is the great Benedicate. It is the planet of wisdom, expansion, pure law, and deep sustaining grace.
So it's basically the best planet to have in your corner.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
when Jupiter is acting as the structural architect of those walls around your mind, the moon, your inner world, is incredibly fortified.
And the classical results listed in our source material are quite something. It says, let me check the notes here. It says, the person with this combination will have many relations, be extremely polite and generous, act as a builder of villages and towns or a magistrate over them, and secure a lasting reputation long after death.
It's a combination for a truly substantial, enduring legacy.
Right, but I have to stop you there because we need to adapt this
Yeah.
like we promised.
Oh, the village building.
Yeah,
Yeah.
building villages. How does that apply to a listener sitting in a modern high-rise apartment in Chicago or working a mid-level corporate job? Are they suddenly going to have an urge to buy a tractor and start laying bricks in the countryside?
No tractors required. This is exactly where we have to look past the literal translation and understand the core underlying principle.
Okay, what's the principle?
Well, a strictly literal interpretation of these texts leads you nowhere. In the ancient world, a builder of villages was someone who created infrastructure, fostered community, and provided livelihoods for others. They were the center of a social web.
Right, they were the glue.
Exactly. Today, that exact same psychological and environmental tendency manifests differently.
So a builder of villages today could be like a municipal commissioner or a civil engineer.
Or a mayor, or it could be completely outside of government. It could be a CEO who builds a massive corporate campus that employs thousands of people, providing them with healthcare and livelihoods. You are building a village of commerce.
Oh, I see. Or maybe even online communities.
Absolutely. It could be a passionate community organizer who creates a network of mutual aid in their city or moderates a huge digital forum. They are the magistrate of that specific space.
That makes total sense. It's about being a foundational pillar for a community, whatever that community looks like. But our source text makes a really crucial point here about the scale of these results.
Yes, scale is everything in this system.
Because it doesn't mean everyone with Gajakesari is going to be the mayor of New York or the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, right?
Not at all. And this is where the nuance of the astrology is so critical. The magnitude of the results depends entirely on the inherent strength of the planets involved.
How so?
The text goes into incredible detail about how to measure this. Are the moon and Jupiter in friendly zodiac signs? Are they exalted, meaning operating at their absolute peak power? What is their residential strength?
So what does a weak Gajakesari look like versus a strong one, like in practical terms?
Well, a weakly formed Gajakesari. Maybe Jupiter is in a sign where it feels uncomfortable or it's starved for light. Might mean you build a small local shrine, or maybe you just organize a really successful neighborhood watch program.
You're still organizing the village, it's just a smaller village.
Exactly. You are still the magistrate of your local block. The generosity and politeness are there, but the sphere of influence is small.
And a strong one.
A powerfully disposed Jupiter and moon, perhaps with exalted strength, means building a massive temple, founding a university, or running a major geopolitical institution. The geometric combination gives you the blueprint, but the actual strength of the planets determines the size and quality of the building materials.
I want you listening to really internalize this. Think about where you are acting as a pillar. What kind of lasting legacy or village are you building in your own life? Are you using that Jupiterian generosity and politeness to foster connections? Because that's the core of Gajakesari.
Beautifully put.
But let's shift our geometric perspective. We've looked at the quadrants, the big structural pillars. Now let's look at the moon's immediate neighbors.
The house is right next door.
Exactly. Our next sequence of yogas looks at the planets directly flanking the moon, starting with something called Sunapha Yoga.
This is a fascinating shift. With Gajakesari, we looked at angles. With Sunapha, we are looking at adjacent space. Sunapha Yoga occurs when there are planets sitting in the second house from the moon.
And there is a strict rule here in the text, right? This applies to any planets except the sun.
Yes. Strictly excluding the sun.
Why exclude the sun?
Because mathematically and astronomically, if the moon is too close to the sun, it loses its light. It becomes a new moon, which in this system is considered weak or depleted.
It's burned up.
Basically, we want the moon to have its own reflective power. So we're talking about planets like Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, or Saturn sitting in that second house from the moon.
The classical predictions for Sunapha are wild. I mean, it says the person will have self-earned property, become a king, a ruler, or an equal to a ruler. They will possess high intelligence, immense wealth, and a stellar reputation.
It's a very heavy hitter.
But break down the why for me. Why does just having a planet next door cause such a massive influx of wealth and status?
We have to connect this to the bigger picture of how the astrological houses function. The second house always relates to wealth, accumulation, speech, and immediate resources.
Wealth and resources.
Now, usually, we count houses from the ascendant, which is the physical body. But here, we are counting from the moon, which represents the mind and the self's perception.
Right.
So the second house from the moon represents the immediate resources available to the mind. If planets sit there, they build a financial and intellectual fortress around the native's consciousness. They provide constant, immediate backup.
Okay, here's an analogy to make this concrete for the listener. Imagine the moon is a VIP celebrity. They're the star of the show.
I love this. Okay.
If the VIP's brilliant financial manager, let's say that's the planet Mercury, or their incredibly wealthy benefactor, which would be Jupiter, is booked in the hotel room right next door, that VIP gets incredibly rich. The resources, the advice, the money, it's all literally one knock away.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. And our source text notes that there are exactly 31 variations of the Sunapha Yoga, depending on which specific planets are involved and in what combinations.
Wait, 31?
Yes, because you could have one planet there, or you could have 4. If our VIP have 3 natural benefics, say Mercury, Jupiter, and Venus, all crowded into that second house room next door, the wealth is immense. It's unadulterated prosperity.
That's a crowded hotel room of billionaires.
Exactly. The mind is constantly fed by intellect, wisdom, and luxury.
But, and this is where I'm curious, what if the VIP's next-door neighbor is not a benefactor? What if it's a debilitated, malefic planet, like a really angry, weak Saturn?
But the VIP's neighbor is basically a con artist stealing their room service.
Exactly. They're draining the resources instead of providing them.
Precisely. The text explicitly warns about this. If the second house from the moon is occupied by afflicted evil forces, like a severely debilitated planet, perhaps associated with a malefic shadow node, the yoga is effectively destroyed.
So the structure is there, but the occupants are bad news.
Right. Technically, the geometric formation of Sunapha is there, but all those hostile forces are entirely focused on the wealth sector of the mind. The text states this renders the person a financial non-entity.
Wow. A financial non-entity. That's harsh.
The structure is there, but the occupants of that structure are hostile.
It's a stark reminder that it's all about who you let into your entourage, which leads us perfectly to the next logical question. What if the entourage is in the room behind the VIP? We've looked at the second house, the room ahead. Now we look at the 12th house from the moon.
Yes, the room behind.
This brings us to Anapha Yoga.
Anapha Yoga is formed when there are planets, again, strictly excluding the sun sitting in the 12th house from the moon.
The effects of this one are really distinct from Sunapha. The source says this gives well-formed organs, a majestic appearance, a good reputation, politeness, generosity, self-respect, and a real fondness for dress and sense pleasures.
Yes, very material comforts.
But there is a massive twist at the end of the definition. Crucially, it says that in later life, Anapha Yoga leads to renunciation and austerity. I mean, you need to explain this paradox. How do we go from loving fine clothes and extreme sensory pleasures to giving it all up?
To understand this, we have to understand the underlying nature of the 12th house itself. The 12th house in Vedic astrology is incredibly complex.
How so?
Well, it is the house of expenses, of loss, of the subconscious, of sleep, and ultimately of moksha.
Moksha meaning liberation?
Yes, spiritual emancipation or liberation.
Right.
It is the absolute end of the zodiacal cycle. So when planets occupy this space relative to the moon, they exert a massive subconscious pull on the mind from behind the scenes.
But why the initial love of luxury? That doesn't sound very detached.
Because initially, the presence of these planets, especially if they are benefics like Venus or Jupiter, might grant deep material comforts and a majestic aura. You are enjoying the culmination of material life. The 12th house rules beds and pleasures of the couch, so there's a fondness for dress and sensory indulgence.
Ah, so you're enjoying the sleep, the comfort, but the 12th house always demands an exit strategy.
Exactly. The lingering foundational influence of the 12th house is detachment. It dissolves things. As the person ages, and as they exhaust those sensory experiences, the gravitational pull of that 12th house energy starts to dominate the mind.
They wake up from the sleep, in a way.
They realize the ephemeral, fleeting nature of material things. The mind, processing this through the 12th house, is naturally pulled toward detachment, austerity, and a spiritual outlook in their later years. It's an astrological built-in mechanism for spiritual evolution.
I think of it like having a spiritual guru sitting in the back seat of your car.
Oh, I like that.
Early in the road trip of your life, you're up front, you're playing the radio loud, you're enjoying the scenery, eating junk food at rest stops, you're living it up. But the whole time, that quiet presence in the back seat is just whispering about the ultimate destination.
Just waiting.
Right. And eventually you turn the radio off, you put down the junk food, and you just listen to them.
That's a beautiful metaphor. It perfectly captures the transition from material enjoyment to spiritual renunciation that Anapha dictates. The mind is supported, but it's supported toward an inward journey rather than the outward financial journey of Sunapha.
Okay, so we have Sunapha in the front room, driving wealth. We have Anapha in the back room, driving spiritual evolution.
Right.
What if the moon is completely flanked on both sides, like front and back are occupied? This brings us to our fourth combination, which seems like the ultimate support system, Dhurdhura Yoga.
Dhurdhura Yoga is essentially the combination of the previous two. It is formed when there are planets on both sides of the moon in the 2nd and the 12th houses simultaneously, again excluding the sun.
The mind is completely sandwiched by planetary energies.
Yes, sandwiched is a great word for it.
The results for this in the text are fantastic. The person is bountiful, blessed with immense wealth, and commands many conveyances, which today means vehicles, luxury cars, maybe a private jet if it's an incredibly strong chart.
Yes, immense vehicular luxury. And we must emphasize the sheer mathematical complexity the source text points out here. Because you are dealing with permutations of 5 different planets occupying 2 different houses in varying combinations, there are about 180 distinct varieties of Dhurdhura Yoga.
180, that's a lot of combinations.
It is. The results change drastically based on which planets are involved.
Let's play with that for a second. If you have an exalted, powerful Mars on one side in the 2nd house and a friendly, wise Jupiter on the other in the 12th house, it's like our VIP moon is flanked by a genius military general on the left and a billionaire philanthropist on the right. You are unstoppable.
You have aggressive, wealth-generating strategy in front of you and a wise, expansive, protective intuition behind you. It's a perfect setup.
But what if they are natural enemies? What if you have a debilitated Mars in the front and a really weak Saturn in the back? The support system becomes a prison, doesn't it?
It does.
You might have a general who is prone to impulsive, destructive anger, and a philanthropist who is completely broke and depressed.
That is precisely how an astrologer must synthesize this. The text agrees with this entirely. It notes that despite the massive variations in how these 180 permutations play out, this yoga invariably grants some level of money, power, and fame, but to varying gradations based on those exact planetary dignities.
So even the bad version gives you something.
Yes. Even a weak Dhurdhura gives some level of support, because the mind is not left alone. The moon has a structure to lean on. Even if the pillars are a bit weathered, the mind isn't collapsing into a void.
Which brings us to the most dramatic contrast in this entire deep dive.
The void.
Exactly. We've seen the VIP mind fortified by quadrants, showered with wealth from the front, guided to enlightenment from the back, and completely protected on both sides. But what happens if the VIP is completely, utterly alone? Let's lower the lights because we are stepping into Kemadruma Yoga.
Kemadruma Yoga is a stark, fascinating psychological landscape. It is caused when there are no planets on either side of the moon.
Nothing at all.
Nothing. The 2nd house is completely empty and the 12th house is completely empty. And remember, the sun doesn't count. The mind is entirely unsupported.
And the classical texts are absolutely brutal about this one. I mean, they do not hold back. The translation says the person will be dirty, sorrowful, commit unrighteous deeds, live in poverty, be dependent on others, and act as a rogue or a swindler.
It is very direct.
The text even notes that even if you are born into a royal family, you can face severe degradation and poverty if you have this yoga.
It is arguably one of the most feared combinations in classical Vedic astrology.
So I have to ask the obvious question here. If a listener goes online, pulls up their chart, and sees their moon sitting all by itself in a house with the houses next to it totally empty, are they doomed to be a poverty-stricken criminal? Because reading that about yourself could be incredibly distressing.
Let's calm the tension here immediately, because context is everything in this science, and literal reading without understanding the mechanisms is dangerous.
Okay, good. Please explain.
First, let's look at the psychology of what the text is actually saying. When it says sorrows, it explicitly means both physical and mental isolation. When the mind, the moon, is completely unsupported by surrounding planetary energies, it lacks a natural buffer against the harshness of life.
It feels entirely alone in the universe.
Yes, it's the ultimate cosmic vulnerability. And the word Nietzsche is used in the original Sanskrit, which implies acts held disgraceful by social codes. Now, why would someone commit unrighteous deeds?
Well, because they feel completely isolated and desperate. If you have no support system, no safety net, and you feel entirely alone, you resort to survival tactics. It's not that they are inherently evil, it's that the psychological void pushes them into a corner.
Exactly. It's a psychological void that can lead to desperate survival tactics. We see this in modern society all the time with hyper-individualism and social isolation. When people lack a village, they struggle.
They certainly do.
However, and this is a massive, massive caveat, that the source material stresses for pages, there's a built-in mechanism for cancellation. Kemadruma Yoga is very frequently canceled.
Oh, thank goodness. Okay, how does the cancellation work? Walk me through the mechanics of that.
The primary cancellation occurs if there are planets in a quadrant, a Kendra, which we discussed earlier, so the 1st, 4th, 7th, or 10th houses from either the birth ascendant or from the moon itself. Alternatively, if the moon is conjunct another planet in the exact same sign, the Kemadruma is completely canceled.
Okay, let's think about that structurally. The mind doesn't have immediate neighbors to lean on in the 2nd or 12th, but if it has strong foundational pillars in the angles of the chart, maybe a strong career house or a strong partnership house, those pillars provide the necessary grounding.
Precisely.
The immediate void is filled by the macro-structural integrity of the rest of the life.
That is the architectural genius of the system.
That is so important for you listening to remember. Astrology is never about a single, isolated point of doom. It's an entire ecosystem. So consider this for yourself. Are you creating your own psychological Kemadruma void by pushing people away?
A great question to ask.
Right. Or are you utilizing the other pillars in your life, your career, your partnerships, your foundational roots, to ground yourself? The planets might indicate a psychological tendency toward feeling isolated, but your awareness decides if you stay in that void.
That's the essence of it. The text gives the worst-case scenario of an unsupported mind to warn the astrologer of the native's psychological fragility. It highlights the absolute necessity of building conscious support structures. The cancellation means that the person feels the void, but life forces them to rely on their career or partners to survive it.
Okay, we've survived the void. Let's move forward and rebuild the fortress. We are transitioning to an incredible combination called Chandra Yoga.
This is a beautiful transition, because Adi Yoga is essentially the ultimate benefic fortress. It occurs when natural benefics, and by this the text strictly means Mercury, Jupiter, and Venus, are situated in the 6th, 7th, and 8th houses from the moon.
Wait, I need you to pause here because we have a contradiction to resolve. For anyone who has studied even a little astrology, they know the 6th and 8th houses are usually the bad guys.
Right, the Dastanas.
Yeah, they are the houses of disease, debts, enemies, and sudden chaotic crises. The 7th is a Kendra, sure, but why would packing the most difficult houses in the chart be a good thing?
That is exactly what makes this yoga so powerful, and it requires a deep understanding of how planetary energy works.
Okay, I'm listening.
So the moon is the mind. The 6th house is your enemies, your debts, your daily battles. The 7th is your partnerships and how you interact with the world. The 8th is sudden crises, vulnerabilities, and transformations.
Heavy stuff.
Very heavy. But when you flood those specific, highly vulnerable houses with the pure benefic light of Jupiter, which is wisdom Venus, which is diplomacy and grace and Mercury intellect, you are essentially neutralizing all the threats to the mind.
Ah, So it's not that you don't have enemies or crises. It's that instead of facing enemies with anger or fear, you face them with wisdom, diplomacy, and grace. You disarm the bomb with a silver tongue and a generous spirit.
Exactly. The effects listed in the source are amazing. It says the native is polite, trustworthy, enjoys a luxurious and happy life, inflicts defeat on their enemies, is healthy, and lives a long life.
Defeats enemies by being polite.
Yes. The enemies are defeated not by aggression, but by the overwhelming beneficence and structural advantage of the native's position. People simply can't stay mad at them. They charm their way out of the 6th and 8th house problems.
That's incredible. Now, you mentioned in our notes that there is a fascinating scholarly debate in the text here about the types of planets involved in this yoga.
Yes, there is. Some historical astrologers suggest there is a Papadi Yoga, which would be made of natural malefics like Saturn, Mars, and the Sun in these 6th, 7th, and 8th houses.
Okay, Papadi versus what?
Versus Supati. The definitive ancient texts, including the legendary Varahamihira, insist on Supati, which implies clearly only the benefics.
Why would malefics in those houses be debated? Wouldn't a malefic like Mars be great at destroying enemies in the 6th house?
Yes, malefics in the 6th house can actually crush enemies through sheer force, but they don't bring the polite, trustworthy, luxurious happiness that Adi Yoga promises.
Oh, I see the difference.
A malefic in the 6th destroys the enemy, but leaves behind scorched earth. A benefic in the 6th turns the enemy into an ally. A malefic fortress is a tense military bunker. A benefic fortress is a flourishing, peaceful, unassailable kingdom.
That is such a vivid distinction. Scorched earth versus making an ally. And the text also explains a scaling system for this yoga, right? It's not just a binary, you have it or you don't.
Yes, the gradations of power here are mathematically outlined. If you have just one benefic in full strength in any of these 3 signs, the person becomes a leader.
Okay, one is a leader.
If there are 2 benefics, they become a minister. If all 3 benefics, Mercury, Jupiter, and Venus, were in these houses, they make someone of eminent station. It scales up.
Wow, it really stacks.
At its peak, it is nearly equivalent to a Raja Yoga, which is a king-making combination. But again, the perpetual caveat, if those planets are devoid of strength or debilitated, the influence is feeble.
So if you have Venus in the 7th from the moon, creating a partial Adi Yoga, but Venus is completely debilitated, you might just be a leader of your local book club, not a national minister.
Correct.
The architecture is there, but the building materials are cheap.
The scaffolding is up, but the building never quite reaches the clouds.
Speaking of building materials, let's talk about building a spotless reputation. Our next combination is Amala Yoga.
Amala Yoga is beautifully straightforward, but profound in its implications. It is formed when the 10th house from the moon, or from the ascendant, though we are strictly focusing on the moon today, is occupied by a benefic planet.
Let's define the 10th house for the listener. It's the highest point in the chart, the zenith. It represents career, public standing, and karma. Right. The actions we take in the visible world.
Yes, it is the peak of your public visibility. It is how the world remembers you. It's your legacy.
And the effects of Amala Yoga are achieving lasting fame and reputation, possessing a spotless character, and leading a prosperous life. I love comparing this to modern business ethics.
Let's hear it.
Well, if you have a malefic planet in the 10th house, like a fierce Mars or a calculating Saturn, you might become incredibly successful and rich. You could be a ruthless corporate raider who uses highly questionable, aggressive means to gut companies and get to the top. The public sees you, but they might fear or resent you.
Exactly. The 10th house malefic brings power, but the methodology is often the end justifies the means.
But Amala literally translates to pure or spotless. So this is the beloved local business owner who gets rich because literally everyone in town trusts and respects them. They refuse to cut corners, they treat their employees wonderfully, and their prosperity is a direct result of their pure character, not their ruthless ambition.
The expert text confirms this distinction perfectly. Amala Yoga ensures that the public legacy, the 10th house, is illuminated by beneficence. It makes one scrupulous about how they earn their living. It is prosperity born of deep integrity. The world rewards them because they are inherently good to the world.
Integrity is a great word for it. But let's look at what happens when integrity meets the unpredictable, chaotic wheel of fortune. We are moving to Sakata Yoga.
Sakata Yoga returns us to the intricate relationship between the moon and Jupiter, which we started with in Gajakesari. But here, the geometry is vastly different and much more challenging.
How so?
Sakata Yoga occurs when the moon is in the 12th, the 6th, or the 8th house from Jupiter.
Okay, so Gajakesari was when they were in angles, supporting each other. Now the moon is in the Desthanas, those difficult houses of debt, crisis, and loss relative to Jupiter.
Yes, exactly.
And the effects sound pretty rough. The text says the native loses their fortune and may regain it. They are ordinary, insignificant, suffer poverty and misery, are stubborn, and hated by relatives. That's a rough read.
It sounds devastating on the surface. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the fourth author points out a profound, fascinating contradiction in the classical texts.
What's the contradiction?
While general writers and lesser astrologers say Sakata brings wretched, inescapable poverty, our author notes that after examining thousands of charts, the poverty is often merely nominal. The real secret to understanding this yoga is not in the word poverty, but in the word Sakata.
What does Sakata mean?
It means a cartwheel.
Ah, a wheel goes round and round.
Exactly. The fortune isn't permanently destroyed. It is cyclical. It goes up and it goes down. The flow of fortune is obstructed now and then because the moon, the mind, is in a difficult geometric position from Jupiter, the planet of wealth and grace. The free flow of fortune hits regular speed bumps.
Let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
Isn't that just life? I mean, everyone goes through financial ups and downs, economies boom and bust. How is Sakata Yoga mathematically different from just normal economic cycles that everyone experiences?
That is the perfect question to ask because it leads us to the predictive timing of Vedic astrology, which is stunningly precise. It's not just random bad luck or macroeconomics.
Okay, so it's timed.
Yes. The text specifies that every time the transiting moon in the sky passes through the 6th, 8th, or 12th house from the radical birth position of Jupiter in your chart, the effects of Sakata are realized.
Wait, the moon transits incredibly fast. It changes signs every 2.5 days.
Exactly. It is a frequent cyclical obstruction. It creates a highly specific, personalized, emotional, and financial rhythm. It's a temporary dip in the wheel, a predictable fluctuation, not a permanent curse.
That is so incredibly empowering to know. If you have Sakata Yoga, you aren't cursed to be poor forever. You just have a financial and emotional life that operates on a very specific, predictable sine wave.
A sine wave, yes.
If you know the dip is coming, you save your resources, you ride it out emotionally, and you know the wheel will turn back up. It's the ultimate astrological lesson in not panicking.
It's the rhythm of the cartwheel. You accept the revolution of the wheel rather than fighting it. You plan for the valleys while you're on the peaks.
Okay, we've covered the required sequential journey through the text's primary moon yogas, but the source has these incredible nuggets of advanced lunar wisdom that I want to weave in here before we finish up.
Let's do it.
Let's look at how specific structural tweaks change the whole game. Let's talk about a combination that brings a lot of heat. What happens when the sensitive, reflective moon directly touches the warrior planet Mars?
You were referring to Chandra Mangala Yoga. This is formed by the direct conjunction or the exact mutual aspect of the moon and Mars.
The text's historical interpretation of this is intense. It points to earnings through unscrupulous means, catering to the baser needs of men. The text specifically mentions running bars, toddy contracts, or illicit trades, and treating one's mother harshly. It paints a picture of a really debased, aggressive character.
It does, but we must provide the nuance that the author explicitly injects here. Historically, yes, catering to baser needs was viewed with strict moral judgment. But structurally, what is happening?
Well, the moon is the mind, right?
And Mars is aggressive, fiery, ambitious, penetrating energy. So this yoga creates a highly ambitious, fiery mind that instinctively knows how to monetize human desires. It is an incredibly powerful factor in establishing massive financial worth.
So it's not necessarily that you are a criminal, it's that you have a mind optimized for capitalism.
In many ways, yes. It is the architecture of the hustler, the entrepreneur, the person who sees a demand and ruthlessly supplies it. And the text provides a crucial modifier.
Which is?
If the moon and Mars are well disposed, for example, if the moon is exalted in Taurus and Mars is strong in its own sign of Scorpio, the earnings will come through entirely approved, legitimate means.
The aggressive monetization is channeled into socially acceptable industries.
Exactly. It's the difference between a highly successful, cutthroat venture capitalist and someone running an illegal gambling ring. The underlying energy monetizing desire and risk is identical. The dignity of the planets determines the legality and morality of the expression.
It's the fiery mind finding its outlet. Now, speaking of these highly specific structural tweaks, the text mentions several other fascinating combinations that refine the mind. I'm looking at one called Pushkala Yoga, and I want to see if we can decode the mechanics together because it introduces a new concept.
Okay, lay out the conditions.
It says the moon must be with the ascendant lord. Furthermore, the lord of the sign the moon is sitting in must be in a quadrant and aspecting the ascendant.
Yes, let's unpack that because it introduces the concept of a dispositor.
What's a dispositor?
The dispositor is the planet that rules the zodiac sign another planet is sitting in. Think of it as the landlord of the house.
Oh, I like that. The landlord.
In Pushkala Yoga, the moon, the mind, is sitting with the ascendant lord, the physical body that connects mind and body. Then the landlord of the moon sign is sitting in a powerful quadrant, directly looking at the ascendant.
That is a geometric bank shot. It's like a triple-layered support system. Mind, body, and environment all interlocked. And the result.
Sweet speech, great wealth, and being honored by authorities. It ensures that the native's inner thoughts, physical actions, and environmental support are all perfectly aligned.
There's another one here that modifies the wealth principles we talked about earlier. Gaja Yoga. Not Gajakesari, just Gaja. It says the moon is in the 11th house, accompanied by the lord of the 9th from the 11th, and aspected by the 11th lord.
Mathematically, the 9th house from the 11th house is the 7th house. The 11th house is the house of gains, networks, and massive profits. So here, you have the moon sitting in the house of profits, sitting with the lord of partnerships, the 7th, and being watched over by the lord of profits itself.
That is a recipe for cash flow. And the result is lifelong happiness and command over livestock and vehicles, which, in ancient times, were the primary physical assets of wealth. Today, that's a fleet of company cars or massive real estate portfolios.
Exactly. It's a highly specific combination for enduring material prosperity through networks and partnerships.
Now, what happens if we combine the principles of Jupiter and the moon that we saw in Gajakesari, but we throw the sun into the mix? The text mentions Kusuma Yoga. Jupiter is in the ascendant, the moon is in the 7th house, and the sun is in the 8th house from the moon.
Well, if Jupiter's in the 1st house and the moon is in the 7th, they are looking directly at each other. They are in Kendras to each other, forming a Gajakesari Yoga. But they are also in a tug of war across the horizon of the chart. The sun, sitting in the 8th from the moon, forms a separate combination called Vasi Yoga, which gives structural power.
So it's merging a few massive foundational elements.
Yes. The result makes one a protector, a magistrate, or a mayor with an entirely unsullied reputation. It's the architecture of a benevolent, powerful local leader who has both the wisdom of Jupiter and the royal authority of the sun backing up their mind.
There is one more here that I find incredibly poetic, Gola Yoga. It requires a full moon in the 9th house, sitting with Jupiter and Venus, while Mercury is in the Navamsalanya. First of all, what is the Navamsalanya?
But Navamsa is the D9 divisional chart. It is a microscopic, zoomed-in view of the chart that astrologers use to see the hidden soul-level strength of the planet.
So it's like an X-ray of the chart.
Great analogy, yes. The Navamsalanya is the ascendant of that soul chart. So Mercury there gives immense soul-level intellect. Meanwhile, in the main chart, you have a full moon maximum reflective power sitting in the 9th house of fortune, religion, and higher learning, accompanied by the two greatest benefics, Jupiter and Venus.
A full moon with the two great benefics in the house of ultimate fortune. The result has to be spectacular.
It makes the person highly polite, learned, long-lived, and specifically notes they will eat wholesome food.
Wholesome food? That seems oddly specific compared to building villages or becoming a king.
It is profound if you think about it. Eating wholesome food means your digestion is perfect, your mind is clear, and you are nourished at the highest possible level. It is a yoga of pure, sustained nourishment, both intellectually and physically. It is the ultimate state of grace.
Finally, there's a specific variation from something called the Nabasa group, Chandra Yoga. This one is purely numerical and spatial. It occurs when all the planets in the chart occupy only the odd houses, the 1st, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, and 11th.
That is incredibly rare astronomically. The odd houses are generally considered the more dynamic, expressive, masculine houses. When all planetary energy is funneled into these houses, the result is a person who commands immense respect and who has a massive, unstoppable capacity to both earn and spend well. They are a constant, high-energy conduit for resources.
I am just marveling at the incredible mathematical precision of these ancient observations. And they aren't just saying, oh, your moon is in a water sign, you're emotional. They are tracing exact geometric house placements, secondary lords, specific angles, and soul-level divisional charts to pinpoint the exact granular flavor of a person's life.
It is a testament to an ancient, highly empirical tradition of observation. They watched these geometric patterns play out in human lives over millennia and codified them with rigorous scientific precision.
But if we are going to look at the whole picture, we have to look at the shadows, too. We promised the listener we would look at the arishtas, the misfortunes or restrictions caused by the moon. Let's shift our tone here a bit, because these are heavy and they require careful handling. Tell me about Putra-Kalatrahina Yoga.
Putra-Kalatrahina Yoga translates essentially to the deprivation of family and children. It occurs under a very heavy, specific set of afflictions. The moon must be waning, so it is losing light and strength, approaching the new moon, and it must be placed in the 5th house.
The 5th house is the house of children, romance, and creative legacy.
Yes, but that's just the first condition. Furthermore, natural malefics must occupy the 12th house, the 7th house, and the ascendant simultaneously.
Wow. So the mind is weak and placed in the house of children. Meanwhile, the physical body, the ascendant, the partnerships in the 7th, and the subconscious, or endings in the 12th, are all besieged by harsh malefic energies. That is a total structural collapse of the relational houses.
Yes, it's a collapse. The result is the tragic deprivation of family. And the expert text points out a crucial detail for astrologers here. There are exactly 36 distinct mathematical variations of this specific yoga, based on how you shift those malefic planets around those 3 houses. It urges deep discretion.
So you don't just jump to conclusions.
Exactly. You don't just see a single malefic planet and predict tragedy. You must see the entire specific structural collapse of the chart's support systems.
And what about Dhurdhura Yoga?
Dhurdhura Yoga outlines severe physical trauma. It occurs when the moon is aspected by the ascendant lord, but the moon occupies the 6th, 8th, or 12th house. The Dastana is in direct, tight association with severe malefics like Saturn, Mandi, or Rahu.
Wait, pause. For the listener who is new to this specific branch of astrology, what are Mandi and Rahu? Saturn we know is restriction and delay, but what are those other two?
Good catch. Rahu is the north node of the moon. It is not a physical planet, but a shadow point in space that causes eclipses. Astrologically, it represents obsession, illusion, sudden shocks, and foreign elements.
And
Mandi is even more obscure. It is a mathematical subplanet considered highly toxic, representing a point of deep restriction and poison in the chart.
So the mind is in a house of crisis, connected to the physical body, but suffocated by restriction from Saturn, shock from Rahu, and toxicity from Mandi. And the classical result?
Unnatural death.
Okay, let's take a deep breath. Because if someone is listening right now and they have dabbled in their own chart online, and they see a waning moon, or they see Saturn near their moon in the 8th house, absolute panic is the natural response. We have to address the philosophical tension between free will and fate. Are they doomed? Are these arishtas a death sentence?
It is the most important question in all of astrology, and I want to assure the listener, do not be frightened by a literal, isolated reading of an ancient text.
Please explain why.
The author explicitly addresses this in the foundational philosophy of the book. Astrology shows a summation of inherited physical and psychological tendencies. It shows the environment you are born into, the cosmic weather system.
It's the blueprint, but not the final building.
Exactly. The text emphasizes that the extent to which we can offset these inherited tendencies by conscious effort is critical. Critical thinking is absolutely essential here. If a chart shows a tendency toward dharmarana, it indicates a psychological or environmental vulnerability to accidents or a tendency to put oneself in harsh, risky environments. Forewarned is forearmed.
So, if you know you have that tendency, you don't go skydiving, you drive carefully, you don't ignore your mental health.
Precisely. You use your conscious effort, your free will, to avoid reckless behavior, to build better support systems, and to mitigate the inherited risk. The yoga shows the current of the river, but you are the one swimming. You can always choose to swim to the shore.
That is such a vital reframing. We've taken an incredible, expansive journey through the lunar landscape today. We've seen that the mind, the moon, is profoundly malleable. It is a sponge. It becomes incredibly wealthy when it's flanked by benefics in Sunapha Yoga.
Yeah.
It learns to let go and find profound spiritual detachment when backed by the 12th house in Anapha Yoga. It can feel completely, terrifyingly isolated in the void of Kemadruma, or it can be elevated to build lasting, monumental legacies when angled with Jupiter in Gajakesari.
It perfectly illustrates the central thesis of this system, that the mind is not a static object. It is a highly dynamic process of reflection, reaction, and relation.
And that brings us right back to where we started. The moon has no light of its own. It only reflects the light of the sun. In all of these yogas, we see that the mind has no inherent fixed state. It only reflects the entourage of energies around it.
That is exactly right.
So I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over. Look at your own life, completely independent of an astrological chart. Who and what are you placing in your second house of immediate resources? What habits and thoughts are you allowing into your 12th house of the subconscious?
That's a great exercise.
Are you isolating yourself and creating your own Kemadruma void by pushing people away? Or are you actively building a Gajakesari fortress by surrounding yourself with wisdom, generosity, and community? The planets might incline, the mathematical blueprint might be drafted, but your awareness is the ultimate architect that decides what actually gets built.
A profound way to look at it. The awareness always holds the ultimate power to reshape the inheritance.
Thank you for joining us on this massive deep dive into the source material. We unpacked a lot of ancient geometry today, and we hope it gave you a new lens to view your own mind. We'll be back next time with another stack of sources and more hidden architecture to uncover. Until then, keep an eye on your entourage and take care.
Goodbye, and keep questioning.